Well, good afternoon, everybody. Well, I'm so glad that you all have taken some time out of your day to join us for this webinar on audio technology and improving the audio capabilities of your church, not only for in-person worship, but also for online worship as well. My name is John Hatton. I have the joy of serving the Heartland District, and I also chair the conference reentry, COVID reentry team. And back in December, our team wanted to present a few webinars to the annual conference to help churches to either begin uh, different ministries or ministry opportunities in their churches if just you have not been able to do so up to this point because of a technology gap. We wanted to provide you all some information about how to start those ministries. I also know that some of you all have been doing online ministries for much of the pandemic, and hopefully, if you are doing that already, this seminar will be able to help you to um, improve the audio capabilities of your church and provide that much more of a professional experience for those joining you online. So again, thank you so much for being here. And I want to thank Josiah Brock for being our webinar host today and sharing his information with us about audio technology. Josiah works for University of Louisville, and one of his main jobs there is he does audio technology. And Josiah, I probably am messing that up a little bit, so I'm going to let you, when we begin with you here in a moment, to just explain to folks a little bit about what you do at U of L. I want to orient everybody to the Zoom webinar. Um, it's a little different than a normal Zoom meeting. And so I want to direct your attention down to the bottom of the screen for just a moment. The bottom of the screen, you should see a number of different icons. Uh, you should see a chat icon that looks like a little balloon that you'd see in a comic strip, and it says chat underneath of it. And then over a little bit, depending on whether you're on a phone or on a Macintosh or on a Windows computer, you should also see down there two little bubbles that say Q&A. And because this is a webinar format, your ability to interact with Josiah and me is going to be through that Q&A icon. So if you have questions that you'd like Josiah to answer as he's talking, you want to go down there to the Q&A and type in your question. Now, I will be monitoring the Q&A throughout the webinar, and I'll make sure that if I know the answer, I'll answer it for you. If I don't, I'll make sure that Josiah answers your question. So just sometimes it may take a few minutes because I don't want to interrupt him if he's in the middle of presenting some information, but we will make sure that every one of your questions is answered. So again, if you look at the bottom of the screen for the Q&A icon, that's where you can type in your questions for Josiah. If you look over as well and find the chat icon, if you press that button, you'll find that as we go through this webinar, I'm going to be entering in information or hyperlinks to different products that Josiah is talking about. That way you can go directly to that manufacturer's webpage and look at the products that he's describing. I also will try and find a couple of links to help you find good places to purchase the products from. Of course, you can find products all over the internet. Musician Friend or Sweetwater are a couple of um, um, popular websites and that musicians in particular like to use. B&H Photo Video in New York City is another place that I have used to purchase equipment before as well, and they are a good company and very trusted in the industry. So, I'll be presenting all of that for you. Hold on just a second. I have a little note. I want to make sure. Okay, thank you. Bruce, I appreciate that. Bruce was sharing with me that some of these icons that I'm talking about, such as the chat icon and the Q&A icon, may not appear on your screen unless you move your mouse down, your mouse icon down to the bottom of the screen, and then they should appear. If you're on like a tablet, like an iPad or something like that, you may have to move your finger down to that part of the screen to get them to appear. But again, if you have questions, you'll want to enter them into the Q&A. So Bruce, thank you so much for that little cue there. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Josiah now. Again, thank you, Josiah, for taking some time out of your day. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, John. Yes, as John said, I am the AV coordinator for the Office of Student Involvement. We change the name all the time here at the University of Louisville. So most of what I do here is set up microphones and projectors for student groups that have meetings or events or whatnot. In the last year, I have transitioned much more to streaming. We didn't do much streaming at all before about a year ago, and I bet that most of you were in the same situation, that you hadn't ever really done any streams before about a year ago. So I'm going to talk about some of these things. Some of you, I know some of you on this call, but for those of you who don't know, I have my Master's of Divinity. I am trained as a preacher. So if I start to talk too much, I'm sure John will get on and tell me to stop talking because I like to talk a lot. I'm going to try to limit this to about 30 minutes and then have 30 minutes for answering more of your questions. Because one of the big issues with technology troubleshooting is that there's not like one size fits all. It's a lot of, well, tell me what products you have, tell me what your problem is, and then we can work on it. I can't just tell you one thing and it will universally fix everything. I have a couple different product recommendations of various levels, depending on what your budget is and what your church services look like and what you want them to look like. So without any further ado, I'm going to go on and get started. So we are doing Tech Tips for Churches, a quick guide to audio in worship. Oh no, my clicker. Oh, right, I have to switch over to PowerPoint. This is a brief overview of what I will be looking at. I'll be looking at different types of microphones, audio mixers, interfaces, speakers, how to prepare for your service, tips for improving audio quality, mostly for your streaming services, but I'll have some other stuff too. And then troubleshooting your tech issues. All right, so microphones. The two main types of microphones that exist are dynamic microphones and condenser microphones. For most of what people deal with, they deal with condenser microphones. They're easier to make work. They don't require quite as much technical expertise, and they are generally used for a wider variety of things. The two main types of the two main microphones that people use are the Shure SM58. It looks like a microphone. If you told a 6-year-old to draw a microphone, they would draw the SM58. It's industry standard. Everybody uses it, and most techs use them as doorstops because they can take a beating. This microphone will last you forever. And even if you break it, if you have anybody in your congregation who has even the smallest amount of soldering skills, they can fix it. These are amazing, and you should have a couple of them in your church for anything, especially singers. If you have anybody who's singing for your service, this is what they should be using. The other condenser microphone that is everybody uses is the Shure SM57, 58, 57. Between these two, you can mic everybody and anything that you could ever want to, pretty much. Beyond that, if you have a little bit more in your budget or whatever, you can get a little bit more specific on your needs. The main thing that people usually need something else for is it's a microphone kit, which has specific microphone kit. I'm talking way too fast for my brain. It's a drum microphone kit because drums have specific needs for things. But if you don't have a drum set, these two microphones will cover most of what you need. Let's skip to the next slide and then we can skip back here. So if you're looking at other types of microphones, there are three main types of polar patterns that you will encounter. When you're using microphones, especially since a lot of churches that I've been in have a weird variety of microphones just lying around. So understanding what a polar pattern is helpful to choosing the best microphone for your situation. The polar pattern is simply the area around the head of the microphone that picks up sound. An omnidirectional microphone has all around the microphone, it will pick up sound in any direction, omnidirectional. Then number three, the cardioid is one of the fairly common ones. It's both the SM57 and the SM58 are cardioid. It picks up in front of the microphone and not behind the microphone. So if you have the microphone, it picks up my face and it picks up a little bit on the sides, but it would be distorted if I were talking into the side, but it won't pick up basically anything from behind it. What that means for a live setting is that it won't pick up the speakers or the monitors coming up from the floor. It's really good at not picking those up. So a live setting, the cardioid, phenomenal for that. Most of what we'll be doing in church services, the cardioid is what you would want to be using. Omnidirectional is better if you're recording and you have a smaller, quiet room. The room I'm in currently is covered in, it doesn't have covered walls. It's just concrete blocks, cinder blocks. So it's very echoey. I don't know if you guys can hear it too badly. This microphone's pretty good at not picking that up. But if I had an omnidirectional microphone, you would be getting a lot of the room feel. You would get the reverb from the room, which if that's what you want, cool. But if you were in a small Bible study, say, and you wanted to pick up a bunch of people and hear the room, an omnidirectional microphone would be great for that. If you have any amplification of the microphone in the room, omnidirectional is going to pick that up, so you'll get a lot of feedback. The figure 8, it picks up on either side of the microphone, as you can see from this picture, picks up on either side. That's a pretty specific case scenario that you would use that in a church setting. That would be instruments, some instruments that benefits from pianos, or if you have singers, if you have multiple people singing, they can be singing on either side of a microphone. I keep doing hand motions even when the PowerPoint is up, even though I know you can't see it. On either side of the microphone. I like to talk with my hands. All right, let's go back to preaching versus singing. For preaching, that's a single person talking. You can use either a dynamic or a condenser microphone. Most of your gooseneck microphones that you have on your pulpits are probably condenser. They are much better at picking up speech patterns like you're talking. We don't have to get into the reasons why, but the main thing is that condenser microphones need to use what's called phantom power. I'll go that a little bit more when we talk about the mixing consoles. But troubleshooting wise, if you're not hearing your preacher and they're at the podium, chances are you forgot to turn on phantom power. I forget it all the time. 100% of the time, that's one of the issues. So check that. Versus singing, a singer is probably going to want to use the SM58. They're more comfortable with it. They know what it does. They know what it sounds like. It's good for picking up vocal singing. Yeah, audience. I don't know how many of you are back to doing in-person services. From what I understand, some people are switching to that. If you are and you're still doing a joint virtual hybrid sort of thing, you should look into doing a audience microphone. Audience microphones are great because they can pick up the audience. That's why they're called an audience microphone. You have to be a little bit careful with them and set your mix correctly so that the audience microphone doesn't go to what we call the front of house, which is the main speakers. You need to make the audience microphone only go to the stream. It adds in a layer of making people online feel as though they're at the audience. It's the difference, if you listen to music, it's the difference between a studio album and a live album. Go to your favorite artist, whoever that is, and look up their studio album, listen to it. It's just the music. It sounds great, phenomenal, it's excellent. Listen to their live album and you'll hear people cheering and clapping and shuffling their feet and murmuring a little bit, maybe even singing, doing that just a little bit. And it adds that layer of ambiance to the music. Does the same thing for a stream. It makes the people at home feel as though they're in the room. And you don't have to spend like a lot of money on audience microphones, since you can just use the SM57s, put one on either side, turn up the gain, make sure it doesn't go to the front of house, and you're good to go. So I don't know how much of a delay there is, but if anybody has any questions about microphones, feel free to type them out. What do I have up next? Yeah, because I'm about to go to consoles as a whole. All right, now John will let me know if anybody pops on with a question. Oh, somebody turned off the lights in my room. I will take a short break and turn the lights back on and yell at someone. Excuse me.
While he's taking a break, I just wanted to note that I put a number of different links in the chat for microphones and audio mixers and video switching devices that Josiah will be talking about throughout the webinar today. Again, most of the purchase links are to B&H Photo Video. One of them is to Sweetwater. Both of them, again, are very reputable companies. I've dealt with both, actually. I use B&H Photo Video a lot for photography purchases, and then Sweetwater I've used for a lot of musical stuff that I do. So both good companies. I would say there are other companies in New York City that are less helpful with customer service. And so you got to really be careful about purchasing from some of those other companies. They may have better prices, but you may not receive your package for a month or two because they sell European versions of equipment and things like that to get the lower price. So it can be a little bit of a buyer beware kind of a situation. So Josiah's back now.
Hey, sorry. The lighting in here is insane, and in this room, my light switch doesn't work. It's connected somewhere else. Anyway, let's talk about mixing consoles. So audio mixing consoles, what they do is they take signal from a microphone down through a channel strip, through a fader, out through more faders, and then out of the mixing console. It comes in It comes in at what's called mic level, and then it goes out at what's called line level. Um, that has to do with the voltage and amperage of the levels of the things. One is quieter, one is louder. Mic level is quieter, line level is louder. It's important to note those differences in streaming because some streaming interfaces or whatnot take a mic level um, feed, and some take a line level feed, and some of them have switches to go between the two. We'll get into that in a little bit. Main points: mixers take a bunch of quiet sounds, mix them together, and send them louder to your amps and your speakers and your interfaces. Analog versus digital. There are two types of mixers. There are analog mixers and digital mixers. Analog mixers are much easier to understand the signal flow because it goes straight on down the line, connected to things, and then out. Digital mixers are a little bit harder to understand if you don't know what you're doing with them, but they are incredibly more flexible. I think that's right. They have a lot more options and abilities that you just don't get with an analog system. You can take a whole rack of analog systems that connect to each other and put them into one digital mixer. Most of your churches probably have mixing consoles in them already, and most of them are probably analog mixing consoles. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with them. I use analog mixing consoles also. One of the big advantages in church settings to a digital mixer is that you can have recallable scenes. So you can set all of your levels, you can set your microphones, your outputs, everything, save it, and then anytime you go back to that worship service, you can just hit scene A or whatever you save it as. This is especially handy if you have multiple worship services or multiple streams or whatever that use the same mixing console. If you had a traditional service and a blended service and a contemporary service, you could have a scene for each different one instead of having to remember exactly how you had it set for the next person, yada, yada, yada. You can just hit the button and it flips on back. Plus, it looks really cool when you do it because these faders change. They're on motors, and so when you click something, it will switch them all around. So it remembers where you were and it sets things back to that point. I've had some conversations with a couple of people in churches who somebody came through and made some adjustments that needed to be made for whatever they were doing, but didn't set it back afterwards. And it's frustrating because you're ready for worship and then bam, it's not there. What am I doing next? Inputs and gain staging. All right, I'm going to switch over to this view again, and then I am going to move my microphone. So I'm going to mute myself for just a second, move my microphone so I can be standing over there.
And Josiah, while you're making that transition, we do have a question, and I don't know when you want to address it. But it's about techniques for miking organ pipes and also grand pianos. Will is the person who asked this question, and so wanted to let you know about that, Josiah.
Yeah, certainly will. What I would suggest with miking a grand piano is the issue with miking it is that it is a fairly wide range of what is going to be producing sound. So you would need to make sure that you are miking different sections of the piano. And some microphones have what's known as a bass roll-off on them. So it will take off the lower tones. I would suggest getting a couple microphones like that. And if you shoot me an email at the end of this, I have my email address. If you shoot me an email, I can help you out specifically, but you would want to get some microphones like that so you can have the mic roll off on the higher notes on the piano, and then not have the roll off on the lower notes so that you can pick them both up and do it in a stereo pattern. So the same two microphones covering the entirety of the piano would be a good one. If you don't want to spend that much money, that's fine. I completely understand that. Still do it in stereo, but the SM57, this one here, would be a good option. Get two of these and have them pointed at the piano in different sides. Can pick up pretty well. And then depending on what kind of mixing console you have, you can do some EQ on it to make sure that they sound right. Organs are a little bit more difficult because there's just way more that you want. And I would actually probably not mic the organs directly, but instead mic the room where the organ is being played. All right, so let's get into inputs and gain staging. So the two types of cable that most mixing consoles use are XLR, which is this three-pronged stuff. This is the male end, and it goes in. The female end goes into the microphone. The signal goes through and goes into the console. Up at the top, I don't know if you can read that too well, but it says mic here. So it goes into the microphone input. The other type of input that we have is, and I didn't actually put a cable with it in here, is 1/4-inch cable that, well, that's frustrating. I thought I grabbed one. 1/4-inch cable, and it looks like this. This is just my headphones, which, speaking of which, you should get some headphones. All mixers have a headphone jack that you can plug in, and then you can listen to specific things on it, which I'll go over in a little while. 1/4-inch. Most mixing consoles that take 1/4-inch take it at a line level. So that's usually instruments. Sometimes it'll be labeled as instrument level. Anyway, so those go into the mixing console, and then there might be an insert. This has an insert. Inserts are a send and receive. So on this rack, I have a feedback eliminator. So my output goes to my feedback eliminator, and it regulates the feedback. Because of the way my room is set up, it often gets feedback this way. It uses a system to tell that it's getting feedback, and before you hear it, it cuts it out. Anyway, insert, send and receive. Then you get to the gain. Sometimes on mixers it's called trim. For our purposes, they work exactly the same. They actually work slightly differently, but we don't need to get into that. This is what you want to use before you listen to anything. So when you're talking about it, when you do your check 1, 2, you want to have it so there are lights over here when it's turned on and working, and they will bounce up and down. And you want to put it somewhere between the green and the yellow. So when you're talking, you'll hit this one, it says PFL, sometimes they'll say solo. And what that means is this is pre-fader levels. And that will put it on the PFL meters over here, so you can see what your channel specifically's levels are. And then you can be adjusting the gain as it goes up and down. Like I said, you want it somewhere at the top of the green into the yellow. You want to avoid the red as much as possible. But you also don't want it too far down on the green. That means that it's not getting enough signal. So you have to boost the gain. If you turn the gain all the way up, if you think of it like a clock face, if you're past about 3 o'clock on it, you're probably doing something wrong with the position of the microphone, and you would want to adjust it from there. Then after the gain, once you get that set, you then usually have a small EQ. You have high frequencies, medium frequencies, and low frequencies. The way that these work is you can boost or cut those frequencies. The medium frequencies, usually one tells you which frequency it is that you're selecting, and then one says how much you're boosting or cutting those frequencies. Same with the low. A good rule of thumb is don't boost anything, cut other things. So if you're having a hard time hearing the high frequencies, it's better to cut the low frequencies and the mid frequencies rather than boosting the high frequencies. And now sometimes you do need to boost them, and that's fine. but if you're able to cut, it's often better. All right, then for the streams, this mixing console only has two outputs, mix left, mix right, and then it has aux out 1 and 2. So if I were using this mixing console, which this is the Soundcraft EPM12, in a church, I would have left and right go to front of house. Those are the main speakers. And then I would have aux 1 go to the stream, and I would send it to go through. This is the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. It takes line level or mic level, XLR or 1/4 inch, and sends it through USB to your computer. It also has a line out, so it can do what's coming out of your computer into the mixing console also. So you have that, and then I would take the aux out and plug it into there and send that to the computer. And so that would be aux out 1, and then aux out 2, I would probably make a monitor for your choir. Most choirs want to hear what the preacher is saying. I don't know about your choir in particular, but most choirs I've dealt with want to hear what the preacher is saying. So you could send aux 2 to the choir. Most of your systems will already have that in place. It might just need some fine tuning to see what exactly needs to be sent where, since you're messing with the system. With a digital mixing console, right. So then we finish that, and then most have a pan left and right. You probably won't need to use that too much unless something's weird with the way your setup is. Then you have your mute, and mine is a PFL, yours might have a solo or Q. And then you have your fader level. If it's all the way down, nothing is going to be going out of it. You have to turn it up and down to get the signal to increase. Then you also have your main outs. On a digital mixing console, let me adjust the camera a little bit. On a digital mixing console, you generally have many more outputs that you can, outputs that you can route different things to. So it gives a lot more flexibility in what can go where. Inputs, this is the TF1, the Yamaha TF1 console. It's a very user-friendly model. I like it a lot. I also use the TF rack. There's also a TF3 and a TF5, depending on how many inputs and outputs you want. But so the outputs, all of these are XLR out. So depending on what you have, it might be better to have a 1/4 inch. Uh-oh, running over a cable. That's not good. All right. On here, you can see, you can see up here is the meter, and it tells me, because I'm selected on the channel with this microphone, it says up here that it's what the levels are, and I can turn up the gain and it will increase, and I'm fairly high. I can turn down the gain and you can see it's jumping quite a bit less when I did that, even though I was talking. Then you have your faders, which do make them louder and quieter, and then you have your main outs. One of the nice things about on here is that I can switch to my outputs, and I could set my my different auxes. This has 20 different auxes, some of which are doubled, and I can be changing them specifically. So I could have some sent to my stream, I could have some sent to record, I could have some sent to front of house, some to the monitors for the choirs. You could even have some sent to other rooms if you wanted. You just have to go in and tell it which ones to send to where. Digital mixing consoles are more expensive, but often have a lot more versatility, which is good for churches that don't have the ability to buy a whole lot of other items. But also maybe your church doesn't need quite that much. I'd be happy to talk with you all about your specific churches and their needs. But the TF1 I find to be great for people who don't know a whole lot about the intricacies of more advanced digital mixers. This one also comes with EQ, noise gates, and compression. it also has different effects already in it, so you can do your own delays or reverb if you want to give it a little bit of atmosphere. What other notes did
Josiah, while we're on the subject of mixing,
I have? Mhm.
we do have a question from Stephen, and he's talking a little bit about how they use an iPhone X or iPhone 10 to stream to Facebook, and they've been using. It looks like the line out from their mixer uh, for their audio, but it looks like that they're having a little bit of trouble. Sometimes the whatever the device they're using, it uses the external sound source from their board, and sometimes it goes to the internal mic of the iPhone. And so he's asking, how can we force the use of the external sound source or the output of the board to their
That's probably an internal Facebook setting. You would need to go into the settings prior to, and I know that they have changed how Facebook Live begins. You would need to go in and double check to see before you begin the stream, check to see whether there is a microphone selection on most things. There's a microphone little symbol, and you can click on that and select different ones. That's probably where the problem is. Sometimes when I hook up the Focusrite, if I do it in slightly the wrong order, my computer will automatically default to a different microphone. You just need to make that one of the things that you check every time that you set up is which microphone is selected, and make sure that it is the one that you want to be selected. And that's a good segue to talking about interfaces. So I use Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. It's great. It has 2 inputs and 2 outputs. What I really like about these is that they can take line level or mic level. So I use these often with my mixing consoles to go to my computer and sync with the stream that I'm doing. I also will sometimes use them for meetings. You just have a single, man, my students are really irritating. I'll be right back.
While he's getting his lights back on. He did mention a few. Oh, now you're back. Never mind. I was going to waste some time there. So
No, I caught them this time. I'm right outside where people often work. And so when they leave, they rightfully turn the lights off. They just don't realize that I'm back here. Oh, I also use this for like meetings where it's just me in a room or just somebody in a room. Instead of using the whole mixing console, I can plug a microphone through an XLR cable directly into this and then adjust the levels of it so that you don't have to have a whole mixing console if you're doing a Bible study, or even if you're my church. I go to Crescent Hill. Our pastor, we don't do a full service. We do a full service, but our pastor is just at her house, streaming it with a microphone. She went a different way, but she could have just bought one of these and plugged a microphone that we already have in. The Focusrite is a little bit more expensive than some. It's still fairly cheap when it comes to these sorts of things. There are definitely cheaper ones. What I would recommend is making sure that it can do both mic and line level, and that it can take XLR or quarter inch. Other people that I've talked to use a Behringer. I don't remember what. All that to say, a lot of different options. And depending on what you do, you might find that you like some of the functionality of one over the other. This also does the line outs, which is nice. So I can plug it in and hear what people are saying on the stream. If you have it set up like that, it also has a 1/4 inch headphone jack. So I can put my headphones on and hear both myself and what the other people are saying. I like that a lot. I didn't go over phantom power. This has phantom power. It has this. Oh, that's out of focus. It's 48 volts. The mixing consoles have a button that says phantom power 48 volts. Sometimes it's 72 volts. You hit that and make sure everything is muted. There's going to be a pop when you hit it, but then it's sending power down the line to any microphones that you have. All right, I'm going over the time that I had allotted for myself, so I'm going to speed up. Preparing for your service. The big thing is before every service, before every event that you do, test your audio in-house and on the stream. Make sure that they both work every time. Like I was saying before, sometimes somebody will come in, change a setting on something, and it won't work. Sometimes when you go in with your iPhone, it won't connect correctly to Facebook Live. Every single time, check it. Most of the problems that I run into are because I made an assumption that something was the same as how I had left it, and it wasn't. I don't know. The Holy Spirit likes to come in and start pushing buttons sometimes. You never know why it's messed up, but it is. Always check both in-house and on the stream. I recommend using a song that you know to play off of your phone or something just to check it. Something that you know very, very well so that you can tell if there are any differences. It might be an EQ issue, so you might have sound going through, but there might be a weird EQ issue that makes it sound weird. If you use a song that you know by an artist that you love, you'll notice any subtle differences that you have. Good way of testing that. Test the mics. Test each mic that is going to be used in the service, and then test at least one more as a backup. So we make fun of sound techs all the time for test 1, 2, test 1, 2, but it's an easy way just to make sure it's working. And you can see it bounce on the little meter, test 1, 2, test 1, 2. Also, have a backup microphone for anybody who's using a microphone, but also have a plan to get them the microphone. Have a sign for your microphone's not working or whatever. Too many times I've seen people who have and I've done it too. You have a backup microphone, but you have no way of getting it to the main speaker or telling them, hey, your microphone stopped working. And they just sort of keep going and they don't realize that anything is wrong. And then finally, during the service and before the service, test and listen to the end user experience. So pull up the stream on a phone, pull up the stream on a computer or whatever, and listen to it. Don't pull up the presenter view. Don't pull up the host view. Pull up the audience view, what the people at home are watching. Listen to it and look at it. One time I was streaming a concert and I accidentally disconnected the stream. On my end, all of this technology over here looked perfect. Everything was fine. I was getting signal, but nobody at home could see it because I had cut the stream off. Always monitor the end user experience. You don't have to do it constantly, but check in every few minutes, pull up your phone, pull up the Facebook Live, have some headphones, have some not headphones, because sometimes things sound different. Check it constantly. Some tips for improving audio and video quality. Wired internet. I forgot my Ethernet cable, so I'm doing it wirelessly. That's my fault. As often as you can, go with wired internet into your computer. I know that a lot of us use iPhones. That's fine. Wired is better than wireless. If you're fine with the quality of wireless, all right, wired is better. Consider which microphones you're using and trace the signal. I didn't put that in there. Whenever you have an issue, follow the signal from the microphone to the speaker. Check every single point, have an extra cable to check everything. That's the easiest way of figuring out where the issue lies. Um, Save bandwidth. This is more so for video. So I've adapted this from some other things that I've done. A good way to save bandwidth is to ask everybody to mute their video. That will also help the audio quality. And then a big one, eliminate background noise. Excuse me. There's like all the time noise around us in the background. And in one of my venues, we have an AC unit that's just incredibly loud. And so I try not to do anything with delicate audio in there because you can hear it. Any microphone that can pick up your voice can pick that up. So when you're going through your church, listen for those sorts of things. A good way to check it is to plug your headphones into your mixing console, turn the gain up really high. Well, don't have it go to your front of house speakers or else you'll get a lot of feedback. But turn the gain up really high and just listen on your headphones. That will tell you a lot of what the background noise is. And you can try to eliminate it as well as you can, but that's sometimes difficult depending on your church building. Sometimes you just have to live with it, but there are some ways that you can position your microphone to get less of it. All right, troubleshooting tech issues. I like helping, especially with worship services. So write down my contact info. I'm sure John or Connie can get all this out to you. That's my cell phone number. Text me. I work better with texting than calling. Text me, email me any issues you have. I'd be happy to talk with you about how to solve your issues or make recommendations for what you need. If you're close to Louisville, I can pop over to your church and look. I enjoy doing that. It's a lot of fun. It was more fun before COVID, but whatever. I still like it. All right, so now, wow, I went quite a bit over what I meant to. Now, any questions that y'all have, I would be more than happy to answer. And I've somehow screwed up my Zoom, so I can't see John. Oh, well.
I'm still here, so don't worry.
I figured you were still here. I heard you periodically, but I minimized it and now it won't come up. Oh, did it somehow get over there? Uh-oh.
While we're waiting for any questions that people might have, one of the things that I've encountered folks have questions about is what is compression, and also what is maybe some of the other effects that you were talking about. There were like, what's the difference between hard knock and hard knee and soft knee compression? What does compression do? What is a limiter, and how can they be adjusted and used for noise reduction in a service?
So, actually, a compressor and a limiter are the same thing, just depending on how hard you have it set. So a compressor, I should have had a picture of this. A compressor takes, once you reach a certain threshold of volume, it then reduces each step by a percentage. So as you get louder, it, instead of going up in a line, it will bend at some point and go in that direction. A limiter simply does that to a hard ceiling. So it'll get louder, and then just stay at a certain loudness. Hard and soft knee is how quickly the compressor acts. So some things require a faster, it's been a while since I've mic'd a drum set, but a cymbal, I think you want to have a soft knee on because you want that like crash for a minute and then back off. A lot of digital mixers have presets. So on mine, I can tell it that I'm using a Shure SM58 for a singer, and it will pull up those settings with compression already on it, and EQ and all that, and it's great. Noise gate is the other big one that you should know about. A noise gate is basically the opposite of a compressor. So as it gets quieter, it won't have any. It'll close the gate at a certain point, so no sound will come through. Which, if there's any ambiance in the room that you want to eliminate, or a lot of people nowadays are typing on their keyboards, and microphones, if they're close enough, will pick that up. I don't know if you can hear that. A noise gate will not let anything below a certain threshold through. Now, if you're talking and doing something, it will still pick that up. It can't eliminate one sound and not another. A noise gate is like a mute, but an automatic mute.
So if before a service, then if you have like people coughing and
Exactly. That will help to eliminate that. Or if you have a noise gate on your pulpit microphone, when your preacher isn't speaking and just shuffling their papers, it will help to eliminate that. Setting that is just sort of mess around with a little bit, get a feel for how it works. If you're in the recording industry, there's a hole with compressors that people go crazy about which ones are better than others and for which reasons. I don't know. They all sound kind of the same to me. But if you have a compressor, spend a service and just sort of mess around with it, increase it and decrease it, because a compressor, you're not going to like cut out the preacher talking or anything. You're just going to change how loud they get. You should always have a compressor on, pretty much always, just in case something goes haywire. It'll help protect your speakers, or the people at home speakers too. Other effects that you can have are, a lot of digital mixers will put have the ability to put like a room feel in, a reverb in. So it's the TF1 has a room, a stage, and like a concert hall, I think, pre-programmed in. So it adds in digital layering to make it sound like it's a bigger one. Other effects are feedback eliminators. They detect which frequencies are more likely to have feedback, and will eliminate those when you're speaking. It can sometimes sound a little weird. It's not the best way of doing it, but depending on what you do, what you have, it can be a good way, especially if you don't have somebody running your sound, or you don't have somebody who really knows what they're doing running your sound. A feedback eliminator is an easy way to make sure you don't get feedback during your live services. Feedback eliminator is not really necessary for a stream since you don't have in-house amplification.
Okay. We have 4 questions.
All right.
Stephen asks, what type of mic are you using right now? That great big one.
I am using the Electro Voice RE20. It is a broadcast microphone. It's good for this sort of situation where I can get it fairly close to my mouth, and I don't have in-house amplification. And you can point, and you only have one user, and you can point it directly at their face. It's a kind of pricey microphone. I just happen to have one lying around because I do this for a living, which is why I didn't recommend buying it. It's not the most expensive microphone on the market. It's just pricier than some of the other ones, and it's not really useful for church services. But no, absolutely, it's a great microphone if you want to use it. Recommendations for an iPhone microphone. I don't know iPhone microphone off the top of my head. I will actually say that the Focusrite I have used with an iPad before. And I think that most USB interfaces can, as long as you have an adapter. If you just want a regular microphone, I don't know. I would, no, he doesn't. I can look into that and get back to me. Shoot me an email, and I can look at some and get back to you and talk about your specific situation. Yeah, Will. I'm new to digital boards. Is it possible to have multiple mixes on a digital board at the same time? Yes, it absolutely is. That's one of the joys of it. You can also have multiple mixes on an analog board. It's just a little bit harder to see because you have to use that strip there, the aux1. So it's a little bit more difficult to do. But yes, on the digital boards, you can absolutely have more than one mix. It's very common to do that. That's one of the main advantages to a digital board, is that you can switch over to, let me So on my outputs, I have different aux outputs over here. I can just hit one and it will, and that's the outputs for that mix. Um, so this one is a mix that goes to the front of house for when this, the last thing that I used this for was Mass Sunday nights. And so this was the mix to go to the front of house. And then this was the mix to go to, they have their choir in the back of the room, so they use different microphones for those. So yes, you can have multiple outputs for different mixes, and you can also have it set up if you have a band. You can have it set up to have a different mix for the monitors, and this one in particular has a program called, I think it's just called Monitor Mix. If you connect it to a Wi-Fi router, you can have the musicians on stage have an iPad or an iPhone and change their own mix that's coming out of their monitor. That's really handy to have, and you can do it with the stream also. So you can have a front of house engineer doing the in-house stuff, and then you could have somebody on the iPad controlling the stream mix. It's a really handy way of doing that, actually. So Bruce, any suggestions on some basic training we could have volunteers take part in, especially for those who think they don't need training? Yes. There is a company called Harmon Pro, Harmon Pro University. They have a ton of free trainings and webinars and certifications. I think I always get it wrong. I think it's Harman Pro, but it might be Harmon Pro. I can never remember, and I always mess it up. I've taken a lot of their stuff, and they walk you through very, very basic concepts, but they also have much more advanced concepts. So depending on where you're at, you can always learn more, and you can always tell maybe parishioners who think they know what they're doing that, hey, here's a more advanced thing. Why don't you try and see if you can do that and skip over some of the stuff? I've been doing the Harmon Pro stuff. Even if I know what it's doing already, it's always helpful to have the refresh. Some of their things are really basic concepts. Some of them are a little bit more specific. And so you're like, oh, yeah, no, I don't remember the exact whatever. I should look that up. And you go and you can take it and watch the videos. Cameras. I am using JVC 4K cams. I have two of them set up in here. They have HDMI out and SDI out that I then take into, I don't know how well you can see this, into the Blackmagic Design ATEM Mini Pro. I love these things. They're great. They're hardware encoders, so they can take up to 4 HDMI inputs. So I'm taking my, every time. Hold on.
While he's turning the lights on, I did put a link in the chat for the Blackmagic ATEM Mini Pro Video Switcher that he's talking about right now. And it's so if you scroll back a little bit in chat, you'll be able to find that link at B&H Photo Video, so you could have a look at it.
It's how I'm doing the PowerPoint also. I have my computer output to HDMI into this, so I can have the PowerPoint going up. You can also do it with Pro Presenter really easily to throw it together. It also has the ability to do, well, that looks dumb. There we go. It lets you do picture-in-picture also very easily. You can also have a lot more control on the computer doing lower thirds graphics and whatnot. I didn't set up any of that stuff because I didn't really need it for this, but it can look very professional doing it with the church service and having different people go through. These are, for video switchers, incredibly cheap. There are three levels. There's the Mini Pro, and the Mini Pro ISO. I go with the Pro because it can stream directly from it. I'm not doing that. I have it plugged into my computer through USB 3.0, and so my computer detects it as just a webcam. I can, though, plug in an Ethernet cable into it and have it stream directly to YouTube or Facebook or Twitch, I think, are the ones that it can do. If you know what you're doing, you can go in and change some settings and make it stream to other things. But from what I understand, most of you stream to Facebook or YouTube, and it can stream directly to those. It also can do some cool, I don't know. It's fun stuff.
It's a really great device. It really is.
They're phenomenal, and they're often on back order now. They've only come out about a year and a half ago. Luckily, my boss listened to me early on in the pandemic, and we got a couple of them. Oh, yes. Fonzie is saying that your interface probably needs to be plugged into an actual power source. And that's true. When I've used the Focusrite, I had to have an adapter that could also plug into a wall outlet to get power to it, because the Focusrite itself drew power from the computer if you plug it into a computer, but it wasn't able to draw enough power from the iPad I was using. So we had to plug it into a power source also. Even though it uses the same thing, we had to get an adapter that had both a power and a USB input. So it's a good chance that that's the problem. All right, and
Right.
it's about time.
I don't know if we have any other questions. Looks like we've got everything. Josiah, I don't know if you have anything else you needed to share or not.
I mean, there's always more things to share. But no, that hits up most of the things that I wanted to say. There's a lot of resources online if you just want to learn a little bit more about what's going on. Resources online that frankly do a better job of explaining than I do. But I'm also a person who knows kind of what they're doing. And so you are more than welcome to contact me. I will put up my contact info again. So anybody who has that, and I actually saw somebody was on the phone, so I'll go on and say my cell phone is 502-909-0774. Feel free to text me. You can call me, but I'm generally better with texting. If I don't recognize the number, I probably assume it's going to be spam if you're calling me. So, and then my email is josiahwesleybrock@gmail.com. Email me too. I'd love to schedule something to talk about your specific issues and see if we can fix it without you spending money, because that's always best. You can't spend money. But that's all that I had. Thank you for inviting me, John. Thank you all for listening.
Absolutely. And Stephen and Patty wanted to thank you, Josiah. So I want to let them know that we did hear you.
Thank you.
So thanks for that. Well, appreciate you, Josiah, helping us out and sharing a little bit about audio. And thank you all for joining us. We hope that this was a little bit of help to help you just tweak your audio and your video, and just give all the glory to God and our best to God in our worship services. So thank you to everybody. You all have made it a success today. So I think, Connie, we are good to close the webinar now.